Hi, everybody. My name is Pam Flora. I am with Cushman Wakefield. And I do research. I don't focus on any particular market. Instead, I focus on the retail specialty across the U.S. So I'm part of what they call the Center of Excellence, which is we focus on identifying trends and creating first-in-class research publications for the company. So that's kind of where my area of focus is. I love the idea of this Let's Get Smart meeting on Wednesday, but I can't say that my idea for the late night karaoke extravaganza that I had last night was smart. So, yeah, no, probably, the voice is a little, yeah. So if y'all bear with me, we'll see how much value I can provide today. But so basically, like I said, what I do is I work on identifying trends. So I just wanted to kind of, mention some of the big ones that we're seeing right now. And if any of you follow Garrick Brown, who's also with Cushman Wakefield, the Retail Wizard on Twitter, he's a good one to follow. If any of you have followed him and been on any of his webinars, some of what I'm going to say echoes what he says, might sound a lot like it. Don't tattle on me. He already knows I'm plagiarizing a lot of it, so it's fine. We work hand in hand on that. So, just so you know that that's where some of it might be coming from. But so I'm sure everybody's seeing in the news, all this negative. The media is just running with all the negative stories in retail. And one of the headlines I saw this week that came out, I think from National Real Estate Investor, was some concerns in the air as RECon kicks off. And I actually thought that was the mildest headline that I've heard so far, because normally it's about Armageddon and the apocalypse and the world is coming to an end. And oh my gosh, how do we stop it? And I really don't think that the news is that bad. I am not here to sprinkle rainbows and sunshine totally on it, but there are some bright spots that we want to point out. So, anyhow, store closures, kind of the story is the store closures are at the highest level since 2010. There were roughly 4,000 major retail chain store closings last year. We originally had estimated that this year there would be 5,000, and then the minute we heard news about Payless maybe closing anywhere from 400 to 4,400 stores, and other news that followed, we upped that to 8,000 closures as we kind of upped our estimate. And that would mean that the store closures could double this year. Well, since we even adjusted that estimate, I've seen other publications come out suggesting 8,600 store closures. And then on top of that, as I was preparing my notes for this, another one came out saying 10,000 stores. So I get where this negative sky is falling, news is coming from, and it's kind of coming from everywhere. So, it is interesting to hear how fast these estimates are escalating. But, there are some bright spots. I think where a lot of the panic is coming from is most Americans identify what they know as retail are those iconic brands and their local shopping centers, and that's what all the news is about. So when they hear that these big stores are closing, those are what they recognize the most. But there's so many, independent concepts or new emerging concepts that are coming out, especially in the food and entertainment, as Doug was mentioning before me. There's high street activity, there's cool street activity. It's not all in shopping centers, and it's not all doom and gloom. So I kind of wanted to talk about the trends we're seeing, but also where some of the bright spots are. And I also saw a quote this week that I thought was interesting. It was from the president and CEO of Macy's, and he said something about the challenges are secular and not cyclical. Didn't think I was going to be able to get those words out. It's kind of a tongue twister, but I thought that it was actually kind of the perfect, description of what's going on. This is not because the economy is declining. Normally when we're seeing this kind of, negative retail news, it's because jobs are being lost and disposable income is dropping and, consumer confidence is plummeting. And that's one of the words they love to use to instill fear in everybody, and that's not what's happening right now. If you look at the key indicators, consumer confidence is, at its highest level in a long time. Jobs are, unemployment is below 5%, and it keeps, dropping. And we're seeing overall retail sales increase. So this is not, it's more about the sign of the times and the changing environment rather than actual economic cycles. So, but So there's a few things that are kind of feeding into it. Like I said, it is a sign of the time. So the first thing is that we do in the U.S., we have an over-retailed marketplace. And I think everybody knows. And that's not just because of recent construction. It's just been over the years. We just have a lot more retail than most other countries. If you compare us to like Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and France, and China and Germany, in a lot of cases, if you just look at the retail per capita on a square foot basis, we have well more than double what all those other countries have. Canada, maybe not double, but it's pretty close. But all those others, we far surpass them. But we also have the lowest sales per square foot per capita. So we're definitely over retailed there. And so what we're seeing now is an adjustment of the uses of retail and not as many, a lot of what's happening is happening in malls as far as closures rather than on, these what we like to call the cool streets, not so much the high streets, but more of the emerging hipster neighborhoods and the regentrifying neighborhoods. So that's kind of one of the big things is being over retailed. The second piece of it is obviously the disruption from e-commerce. This is not news to anybody. This is something that we all know. But just to give you some stats to back it up, in 2009, online retail sales were accounted for 4.2% of total retail sales. And as of end of 2016, that has jumped to 8.3%. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, 8.3%, but I'm talking total retail sales. So that includes automobiles, that includes gasoline, and things that aren't going to be as affected by e-commerce. So if you just look at the GAFO categories, which is general merchandise, apparel, furniture, electronics, and sporting goods, now you're looking at an e-commerce share of 30%, almost 30%, I should say. It's about around 29% of total retail sales. So it definitely depends upon what category you're looking at. So obviously some categories are being hit harder than others, and some are more recession proof, like your healthcare, personal services, your food and beverage. Not to say they can't be touched. There's definitely medical apps coming out there where you can have an appointment with your doctor, online, or there are, ways that you can get your groceries delivered to your house. All of those are starting to emerge, but that can only go to a certain point. So it's a little more recession-proof than some of these other concepts. So I would say, too, though, while I talk about e-commerce and, oh my gosh, here's, it keeps climbing, and what's it going to do to the future of retail? There are some online-only retailers that are now moving into the bricks and mortar space. So they're recognizing that they need to engage their customers and create an experience. So you've got the Warby Parkers and the Fabletics and those that are now actually entering the bricks and mortar space. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see. But it's just a change in the kinds of stores and everything that we're seeing in there. If you look at very specific categories, the largest one taking the biggest hit is going to be your media, sporting goods, and hobbies, which over 50% of sales in that category are e-commerce. And that's going to be your former Blockbusters. They're not even around anymore. Your record stores. Those aren't around unless you're in some hipster neighborhood buying retro vinyl, which I'm not knocking it. I love those, so I will keep visiting those stores. But I'm just saying that, you don't go into your traditional record stores anymore. And even bookstores have taken a big hit. Barnes & Noble has shown us that in some cases, they're selling books still, but they've incorporated more of their store inventory to gifts and toys, and they're actually incorporating dining options, cafes and full-service restaurants, because they understand that it's about engaging that, food and beverage and entertainment to get your customers in there. So it's definitely changed the way that these remaining retailers are operating. And then you've got in the 20% range of e-commerce is, your apparel and your furniture and those kinds of stores. And then things that, like I said, that were hit the least were health and personal care and food and beverage. So, and obviously, it's no surprise, Amazon is definitely the buzz, the name that we all know that is, taking up the share of this. And so here's some numbers behind that. Amazon's market cap as of 2016 was higher than the next 8 top retailers combined. And so when I say those top 8 retailers, that includes Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Macy's, Kohl's, Nordstrom, JCPenney, and Sears. So it's pretty impressive to hear that. Their total 2016 revenues were up 27% from the year before. That was 136 billion. Almost 95 billion of that was from Amazon selling direct products that they have the ownership rights to sell, and then the rest of it was their marketplace sales and their web services. But Amazon in 2016 accounted for 43% of all U.S. online sales, so that's pretty significant. That's a pretty significant number alone. And so there, a lot of this competition that we're seeing in the apparel and the department stores is actually coming directly from Amazon. So that's where people are keeping their eye on that. But with that said, like I said, not everything is negative news here. There are some definite bright spots. While Amazon has stepped into that convenience realm of, like he was saying, everything's delivered right to his house, and he enjoys that. And I enjoy that too. I'm a big online shopper. I am not an online returner. So I'm the person who's going to keep those brick and mortar stores in business, because I want to get it to my house, but if I have to return it, I'm not going to box it up and send it back. I'm going to go straight to the store, and I'm going to keep that part myself. I will keep those brick and mortar stores in business. But so while Amazon has stepped in that convenience space, you've got these off-price retailers that have stepped into the value space. So we're seeing growth like we've never seen before among like Nordstrom Rack and Saks off Fifth Avenue, TJ Maxx, Ross, Burlington Coat Factory, and even the Macy's Backstage. They're trying to take their off-price, and they have a plan to open, I believe, about 30 to 40 stores there. So, and kind of the thing about like a Ross or a TJ Maxx is you can argue that it is experiential because it's a treasure hunt. You have to go in there. Not everything is organized by color and size. You're going through the racks to try to find the right thing you need. Or in their home goods, there's a section, and it is just a wonderful mishmash of just everything that you want to try to find for your house. So it's experiential, and that's why they're doing very well. And at the current rate of growth that we're seeing, TJ Maxx could actually be the top seller of apparel within just a few years. So Amazon is expected to surpass Macy's, and then TJ Maxx is right behind that. So other categories within apparel that are expected to grow are fast fashion, athletic apparel and shoes, and the premium and luxury categories. But we're going to see contraction in the mid-tier women's apparel, the department stores, and the teens. That's where we're going to see most of that. So the question is, the ones that are going to stick around, if they're in the middle and they're not necessarily got that online channel, convenience or the off-price value, how are they going to retain their customers? So they need to find a way to offer service, experience, and compete with pricing and convenience. So one of the points that Garrick makes, I'm going to quote him several times on this, but he was saying there is no room for mediocrity in retail today. So you have to have a great concept, you have to have a great location. And so that is one of the most important things. You're not going to get by with same old dull concepts anymore. You're going to have to know how to engage your consumer properly. So the other types of retailers that we're seeing growth in is grocery still. There are definitely some contractions going on in some of the companies, but overall we're seeing some growth there. Off-price retailers, like I just mentioned, and still we're even seeing growth among the dollar stores, which they have been growing at a crazy pace. If you add up the stores that have opened in just the top $5 chains over the last 5 years, they've opened 7,000 locations, more than 7,000. So which comes out to more than $4 stores per day over the last 5 years. So it's growing at a crazy rate. So they could face this saturation issue coming up, but they still have growth plans right now. And we don't know when that saturation is going to hit. It could keep going for a while. It depends. If off-price and discount is what everybody wants right now, maybe this will be successful. So we don't have an estimate of how soon that's going to happen, but they are still growing at a crazy pace. So there's growth out there. It's just maybe not in what you've traditionally seen in the past. So I guess the question is, so what does this mean as far as real estate is concerned? The growth that's happening, like I mentioned in the grocery, outlet, that's all happening in the neighborhood centers. So neighborhood centers, which have grocery and drug anchors, those are typically going to be, and then the shop space is like more restaurants and personal services and things that are e-commerce resistant, those are going to be the centers that are going to probably fare the best, because they're not going to see as much turnover from a lot of these apparel, and other concepts that are starting to shrink. Not to say they won't see any contraction, but especially Class A centers, you're gonna do fine with those, but those are probably gonna fare the best. Power centers are losing a lot of their anchors, but it's mostly in the junior and mid box users, and so a lot of these off-price retailers can backfill those spaces. So power centers are probably going to have a lot of spaces opening, but also a lot of opportunity for those to get filled. And again, this is again where I want to stress: no room for mediocrity in retail. Everything, it's going to hit. These closures are going to hit all center types, all retail property types, but it's not really going to hit the Class A properties. So if you've got a Class A property, you're in good shape. When these retailers are looking at closing their locations, they're not going to close the best performing ones, which are going to be in their A centers due to location and demographics and all of that. So they're going to close the lower performing ones. So that's why your Class A centers are going to be good, no matter what category that you're in. We have seen, if you look back, we have 200 less malls than we did 10 years ago now. And that's because some malls have already closed and been redeveloped into new concepts. And it's not like they've gone away altogether, but what they used to be as a super regional mall, now it's a mixed use property, or now it's an entertainment focused property or whatever. So they've been redeveloping these. We still see that with some of this fallout, some more malls are probably going to close over the next 10 years, maybe another 300 malls. So what's going to happen with those, again, we're going to see a lot of this mixed use development, and something, again, I'm going to quote Garrick when I say this, what he calls suburban retail development, which is suburban/urban retail. Like, so it has an urban feel and walkability to it, and with a town square, but it's in a suburban area, but it's more set up like an urban mall. So that's a trend to keep looking out for as this redevelopment is going to be coming forward. So it's not going to be those traditional malls that we're looking at. We're going to be seeing a lot of redevelopment and projects like that, and a lot of mixed use with apartments and medical office and even boutique hotels mixed in. While there's a lot of anchors, that could close, we could see, maybe 1,000 anchors closing. I mean, let's even look. We, had mentioned Sears earlier. If that, happens, that could be 600 stores alone. So we could have another 1,000. It could even go up to 1,500. That's kind of, probably the max. That's a high estimate. So probably more around 1,000. And so what's going to happen with all these anchors? And as Doug was mentioning right before me, a lot of those are going to be backfilled by entertainment users. So already we've seen some of that happening. Dave & Buster's has taken a portion of 3 former Sears stores nationally. Nobu took a portion of former Saks Fifth Avenue at the Galleria in Houston. Punch Bowl Social took over a former Nordstrom at Indianapolis's Circle Center Mall. So we're actually seeing some of these entertainment concepts come in, and we've also seen a lot of food halls coming in. So we just had a big, I don't know if anybody was at our panel discussion the other day we had on food halls. It was pretty good. We did a report. If anybody wants to take a look at it, I don't have copies with me anymore. We sold out of them the other day. They're free, but sold out. But if you're interested in seeing it, just go to the Cushman Wakefield site and search for food halls, and it will take you right to the page, and you can get to download the report. And there's also a few videos that go along with it for the big markets where food halls are, really big. New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, I think, is the other one that we've got a video on. So you can always check those out. But food halls are a big deal. You've got these malls that are being redeveloped right now. You've got the Century City Plaza in LA that has an Italy going in as a major anchor right now. You also saw Italy go into the World Trade Center Westfield property that was redone. So this is a big thing. It's very it provides an experience. It's the food and entertainment realm. So that is something that's very popular, and something that I think we're going to see more of going through. And that's kind of what people are bringing in. I also have to say Yard House took a portion of a former Sears at the King of Prussia Mall in Pennsylvania. I just did a big report on craft breweries, which should be coming out, and I can tell you that craft breweries brings the people in. So if you have the right space and you think you have the right neighborhood and you can do the right improvements for a brewery to come in, take a look at that as a possible anchor solution. They do typically go into, even industrial spaces, just because they need that, they need the size and they need, the loading and all the industrial specifics. But if you can retrofit the space in a retail center to bring a brewery in, I say do it. And so, like I said, Yard House is actually in one of these malls. So, some other interesting concepts. I know he had mentioned a few before me, but, we're also seeing things like the rec room. That was something else that we had found out, is where you literally are paying to go in and break stuff up with a sledgehammer or, so, hey, got to get some aggressions out, go in and do that kind of stuff. We're seeing a lot more movie theaters being converted, not the standard movie theater. You're seeing those full service movie theaters with full food and drink, reclining seats, more about creating that event. A couple other concepts that he had, I had pulled them up here. Escape rooms are a big thing right now. So everything about creating this experience and doing something fun, team building for work, those are things that could all be put into these. Again, like you've got the Dave & Buster's and the bowling alleys and all of that kind of stuff. So there are definitely openings for these big anchors, and really it creates an opportunity in the A centers that are going to survive. If any of these anchors do close, this is a great opportunity for these landlords to repurpose that space, either break it down or bring in a new large tenant that they can charge, a more current rental rate for, because a lot of these anchors have been in there for 20 to 30 years. And so now that they can update it with fresher concepts. And so, instead of seeing some of those traditional department stores, now you're seeing more of like a Topshop or a Zara being an anchor. So I think that's what we're going to see. So when I saw that question, your questionnaire, am I, optimistic about shopping centers? I am. I think they're going to be very different. I don't think if we're talking about what we see in shopping centers today, no, I don't think we're going to see the same thing, but I'm optimistic about what we're going to see, and I think everything's going to right size for it. I think that's where my optimism lies. So I thought that was a great question. So, but I think that's pretty much what I was going to cover as far as, question.
So for example, Amazon, we tend to forget that Amazon has been around since the mid-90s, late 90s to today.
Right.
And freaking out today over Amazon
right.
is kind of, misguided, as a sense that they've had time to do trial and error over so many decades.
Right.
But is showrooming still a thing that's affecting retail, or are we just seeing a revolution where pretty much the rock's coming to hit the dinosaurs and we're reinventing concepts like more entertainment gear type shopping centers and things like that? Or is tech a component, or is tech a direct contributor to what's happening in that revolution of changing the tendencies of going more of experience-based, like escape rooms and rec rooms and entertainment type things?
I would definitely say that tech is a big part of it, but because it does create the experience. But let's even look at you've got Tesla in malls that have a showroom there, but you're not actually buying the car and driving it off the lot. So you still got the tech side of it, but they're building the experience if you're going in the showroom, and you can still do test drives there. So if you walk into some of these stores, there's, Perch at the malls, which is, the home, design kind of center. You can go in there and really kind of get in there and work with a designer on all that kind of stuff. So I guess if you're talking about showrooms and that kind of, aspect, I would say there's still a need for that experience. But yeah, the tech side of it kind of, you can do a lot of research online too. So I think that's why we're seeing this shift, is that I feel like these days it's more about people coming to the mall to either look for one specific thing, or they're going there for the food and entertainment, and they happen to walk through and shop for other stuff because of this online thing. They're not making the trip to the mall to buy the thing that they could buy online otherwise. But that's kind of how I feel. Right, exactly. Exactly. So.
If you had a Wayback Machine and could go 15 years back and talked to the chief executive of Sears and Kmart and Walmart, what advice would you have given them?
That's a really good question.
It is a really good question. I don't even know what advice I would have given them, because looking back, like you were saying,
Amazon stock.
right, I know, but that's the thing. So like he's saying, Amazon has been around, but we didn't realize what it was going to do and take off and how they were going to learn over the years. So 15 years ago, I didn't have that kind of knowledge to be able to say, yeah, you should be looking out for this. And I don't know if we knew how much it was going to take off. Thinking back 15 years, yeah, I think I was still learning how to get my computer to do certain things. Yeah, I just wasn't as savvy. So I don't actually know how to answer that question. So.
Now, it must be pretty fascinating, the fact that you're dealing with data and trying to look up with trends and things like that.
Right. I like that you called it fascinating, because a lot of people wouldn't see it that way, but I like it. I think it is. I think it's fascinating. So a lot of people.
I don't like doing the work, but the data can reveal a lot of interesting things that give you an advantage. Have you guys identified the source of, and I'm sure it's going to be speculation more than anything.
Okay.
But have you guys identified a source of why we're seeing this really fast revolution in retail right now? Because all this entertainment, it seems like it just hit really hard and fast, rather than being a process that happens over like 5 or 7 years, like what we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Is there a speculation, or have you guys identified what may be the culprit for this driver?
It's the millennials. No, I'm just kidding. We had the discussion.
Makes sense, yeah.
I just think that everything is more available out there now, and everything is streaming. So I think like the entertainment media has a lot to do with it, because you're looking at everything online, you're learning them a lot more. Everything, like, look back, 20 years ago, how many TV channels did we have, versus how many you have now? So there's so much more information out there, and there's so much more influence from the media rather than just influence from your social sphere. So I think that has a lot to do with it. YouTube videos are teaching people how to do things more, all that. So I think that that's kind of helped to build this online thing. You see something on YouTube, you can do it, you can go right online and buy it. You don't have to rush out and do it. So, and again, there's so many more TV shows to be exactly like, you want to know how to do woodworking on making something for your house, there's a TV show for that, or a TV channel dedicated just to that. If you want to know how to go, duck hunting, there is a channel and a TV show for that. So there's very specific, whereas years ago you wouldn't have had, as much information coming at you. So I actually think that has a lot to do with it. That's kind of one of the speculations that I've talked about with others. Yeah, so the question was, do I think that there's going to be a rent adjustment now with more centers having the food and entertainment component in it, and how would that affect like percentage rents and that? Yes, I think that we're going to see rent adjustments now anyway, just because the rents have been going up and up and up and up and up and getting unrealistic, and now we're going to have a bit of a reset. We're seeing it on the high streets already, because they just kept going up extraordinarily, and we're starting to see a reset there. I don't know how that's going to affect how the percentage rent structure is going to be, because a lot of that can depend upon who the anchors are, and if the anchors go dark, now your percentage rents are going down because the foot traffic is going down. So I'm not sure about how the structure would be affected on that. That's a really good question. I don't have all the details, but
All right, come back next year.
Yeah, exactly. I will do my research on that, and I will find out for you. That was good.
Well, thank you, Pam. That was really
thank you so much.